Welcome to Inside Racing. Geoff White's success in the racing industry is the result of careful planning and expert management, the very same formula he used for many years in his chosen field of engineering and construction. He started as a junior draftsman with the Department of Main Roads, went on to attain his engineering degree and work for several companies before starting out on his own. Geoff's achievements in construction are exceeded only by his deeds on the turf. He has shared with wife Beryl the thrill of winning a host of Group 1s with some of the best gallopers of the modern era. Let's meet the Duke and Duchess of Sydney Racing. Geoff, you were born in Hillston. You moved to Deniliquin at around 4 or 5 years of age with your parents, 2 brothers and 1 sister.
Correct.
What are your recollections of childhood days?
Well, John, they were happy recollections. We had a nice family and they were good people, and my mother was quite lovely and my father was a good hard-working person.
He was a bridge builder.
Yes, he built timber bridges prior to concrete becoming popular, and he built probably most of the timber bridges in the Riverina.
Is this where your fascination with engineering and construction began?
I probably wouldn't have thought ahead that far, but it certainly was indelible in my mind. I could build a bridge by watching what he did.
Yeah. More than 40 years ago, you and I shared the same employer, the good old Department of Main Roads, now known as the RTA. You were a draftsman, a junior draftsman in Deniliquin. That was your first job.
I spent the first 6 months of my time out of school working with my father, building a couple of bridges down at Moolameen, which is not far from Deniliquin. And the Shire engineer there was a man called Clive Monk, who later came on and became Managing Director of Blue Metal Industries. Lovely man, and he and my father were pretty good friends. And this job came up as junior engineering draftsman stationed in Deniliquin. And it required a leaving certificate, and I got it. I think there was a bit of influence there somewhere. And I did that for 2 or 3 years.
Now, you attained your degree in civil engineering by correspondence. You didn't go to university. Now that says a lot for your powers of concentration. It's hard to imagine that you could stay so focused for so long studying at home.
Yeah, well, it is, but I really wanted to be an engineer. When I left the Main Roads, I worked as a cadet engineer, for want of a better word, with the municipal engineer in Deniliquin. And I was playing cricket and tennis and going with Beryl, and I said, I'll never get through engineering this way. So Beryl and I had a bit of a talk, and I applied for a job up at Inverell, which took me a long way from Deniliquin. And I really knuckled down and studied.
Geoff, how did you get started in business in your own right? Very earliest days.
Well, it turned out I was a pretty good engineer, as it turned out, and I was Shire engineer at Cobar when they first cut up the Western Division. And we were there for 5 years, and Beryl and I had talked when we didn't want the kids growing up out there, so I applied for a job, or several jobs in Brisbane, and I think I got them all, but we moved to Brisbane as general manager with a subsidiary company of Katie Morris. And at that time, Katie Morris had won the first stage of the Sydney-Newcastle Expressway from the Hawkesbury up to Mount White. And I went to him and said, I need some plant to build an aerodrome up at Winton in Queensland. And he said, well, I don't think I can give it to you, but go down to the Expressway and see if you can pinch some of theirs. They've got a lot of gear. So he sent me down there, and I found the job was in a bit of a mess. So when I went back, I told old KD that he ought to seriously look at the job, because I think it's being run incorrectly. 3 months later, he called me over and said, would you go down there? So I said, well, I wouldn't like to leave my general manager's job. And he said, well, you can do both, which I found out I could. And so I came down and was project manager on Sydney Newcastle Expressway. And I got a real taste for construction in the real sense.
Yep. So you set up shop?
Set up shop in Tamworth. And I called myself GB White Proprietary Limited. And we were doing smaller works, which I didn't really like. So I decided to go public. So in 1972 I went public as White Industries Limited. And we progressed and progressed and progressed, and we got the bigger works. And
we've got a photo here from your collection which captures a special moment in your life. You're shaking hands with a gentleman called Mr. Kominami, who was the head of Japan's Kyushu Electric Company. What was so special about this moment?
We were developing the Uland coalfields, but we had to get orders. And Mitsubishi acted as a trading house in Japan, and they took us down to see Kyushu Electric, and Mr. Kominami listened to us and said, well, I think this was going to be the next big mine in New South Wales. And he gave us a letter of intent. And he said, well, I'll be in Sydney in a month and we'll sign it. I said, well, I would very much like you to come up to the mine and we'll sign it in front of the men. And that's the photo with the men in the background, the tin sheds, and there was big front page on the Mudgee Guardian. And he was a very good friend of ours, Mr. Kominami, and we honoured our word, and he was our first customer.
Now that letter of intent gave you the financial confidence to go ahead with the development of the Uland coalfields.
Yes, it did, certainly did. We used it ruthlessly, raising funds, and we got all the funds necessary, and I had Mitsubishi as a joint venture partner, and between that letter of intent and our obvious ability to develop the mine and Mitsubishi's statue, we got the money we needed to build the mine.
Now, what did you know about coal mines at this stage of your life? How did you recognise the potential in Uland?
Well, first of all, the reserves were about 300 million tonnes, proven reserves is the way you call them. So we had plenty of coal.
The future of Uland depended on the rail link to Newcastle, and this is where the state government came in.
Yes, and I talked to the various departments in New South Wales government, and I wasn't getting very far, and then Neville Rand came in as Premier. And I asked him once about it, how about we build the railway? I'm going to build this big mine, and I need to get to the port of Newcastle. And he said, who's going to pay for it? I said, we are. He said, well, let's do it. Simple as that. And so off we went.
I've been able to plunder the archives, and we've actually come up with some footage of the day you officially opened Uland. Okay. Neville Rand was there, yep. And was in buoyant mood, and so was Geoff White.
Well, it was very exciting to officially open that mine and the railway line. And we were obviously ecstatic about it, and it was a great boost to Neville's career, and it was a great mine.
Geoff, your interest in racing began during your days in Tamworth, when you became involved with a little social group called the Red Robin Syndicate. And you decided to syndicate a few horses, race them locally, and have a bit of fun, little dreaming that it would lead you into a very important phase of your life commercially.
Well, there was a group of friends that had the Red Robin Syndicate, and golf club people, I think, and they invited me to join, and we put $10 a weekend or $20 a weekend. And we won a horse in the Tamworth Cup raffle, which was a Star Kingdom type horse. That was, we won a few races for us, but then Beryl and I, the business was growing, and I seemed to be down in Sydney most of the time from Tamworth, and Beryl and I decided we'd move to Sydney. That took me out of the syndicate, and we came to Sydney, and we missed the country quite a lot because we're both country people. And we went over and see Jack Denham and see whether he'd train a horse for us. He said, yeah, I would. So we went to the sales and we started watching the sales and buying horses, and we bought, and Jack said he'd train them for us, yeah.
Your association with Jack Denham spans 34 years.
That long, eh?
He has other long-term clients, such as Wal Truscott, George Altamonte. Jack Denham's owners stay with him forever.
Our attitude is we engage Jack to train our horses. We don't interfere, we don't talk to the jockeys, apart from socially, but we don't interfere. Jack nominates the races, and we race to win. That's our intent. We're not gamblers, punters, but not gamblers. And Jack's been good to us, and we've been good to Jack, and we like the Denham family, and Alan's doing a good job for us at the moment. So we've never had a bad word.
The horse to provide you with the unforgettable thrill of your first Group 1 was the great Masqué. Only had 15 starts, 8 wins, 3 placings, $236,000, which in the modern era would equate to 4 or 5 million. He was so big and gangly early on, you couldn't have imagined that he was a golden slipper type. It was a pleasant surprise, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, I remember when we went to the sales, Jack had picked this horse out, and my first impression was, gee, Jack, isn't he too big? Jack said, no, he's not too big. You look at the legs on him. And that comment was reinforced by Tommy Smith. Tommy said, Geoff, he said, you bought the best horse in the sale. He said, I wanted him, but Percy Sykes wouldn't pass him. I said, don't you think he's too big, Tommy? He said, no, what did Jack say? He said he's big, but look at the legs on him. He said, perfectly right.
Yeah. When you decided to syndicate Masqué as a stallion, for some bewildering reason, you couldn't get much interest in him. So much so that you took the majority of shares yourself to get him to stud and get him started.
Yes, well, Les Young helped us and put the horse together, and we started with, we had 42 shares, and we had 16 left when it was all over, so we kept the 16.
Geoffy crossed wonderfully well with Sir Tristram mares, and that particular nick produced one of your all-time favourites, the great filly Triscay, winner of 15 from 26, almost $2 million in prize money. She won a Blue Diamond, she won a Champagne Stakes, an Australian Guineas, an AJC Oaks, although you must have had some palpitations in the last 50 metres of that Oaks when Lee's bid flashed up.
Yeah, well, Lee's bid did flash up, and I was sitting with Jack Ingham at the time, and he said, I think we're going to get you, and she didn't. Triscay never gave in. She was a wonderful horse. She raced 26 times, we had 25 checks.
Yeah. You've had so many good ones, I don't know where to start. One of my favourites was Falante, whose record could have been so much better had he not lived and raced in a freakish era. He kept running into horses called Octagonal and Saintly and Nothing Like a Dane. But he did win an Epsom in 1996, and he had that one a heck of a long way from home.
He was he was a really good horse, a good-looking horse too, and he won or was placed in 10 Group 1s. But as you say, the octagons knock us off. Saintly knocked us off in the Cox Plate, which even Bart Cummings today says, I still think you won it.
Yeah. In more recent times, you produced Eremine, or Eremine, whatever you prefer. Great record, 27 starts, 12 wins, 9 placings. He won a Queen Elizabeth, a BMW, a Ranvet, an AJC Derby, a Rosehill Guineas.
Where would you find 5 better races than that? He's a champion. He's won $4.25 million. He never gives in either, and he's a good horse. He's a good horse.
Eremine just the leader from Stella Grande. Railings the outside. Eremine, he's fighting on from Stella Grande, and it's going to be Eremine's AJC Australian Derby. Eremine beats Stella Grande and Railings.
One of your great favourites, in fact a favourite with racing fans all over Australia, was that docile giant Yippee-I-O. I think even his name had a lot of appeal with racing fans. He had 59 starts, he was pretty busy, 14 wins and 15 placings, 2.1 million, and pleasingly for you, he was out of a Masqué mare.
Yeah, that's right, Yippee-I-O. Little side story, coming in from Mascot one day, I could see this sign up over a Mexican restaurant which was YIP, and I said to a colleague who was with me, what's that? So as we got close, it was Yippee, Yippee, Yippee or something like that. And I thought, what a wonderful name for that foal we've got out of
Yodels.
Yodels. So I brought it home and asked Beryl to shorten up to 7 letters, and that's what she came up with, Yippee-I-O.
Well, Geoff, you've mentioned Beryl on more than one occasion, so I think we might pause for a break on Inside Racing at this stage, and when we come back, I think if we know what's good for us, we'll introduce your better half.
Yes, that would be good, John. She is my better half too.
Well, Beryl, it has been said many times that your interest in racing is even more passionate than Geoff's.
I'm probably more involved because Judy and I used to go and buy the horses or suggest buying certain horses.
Daughter Judy?
Daughter Judy, yes.
Yeah.
And I name them all, not always properly, but... And that's probably what... I don't know whether it's a great passion. I do love it. But.
Do you prefer the on-track atmosphere, or do you tend to stay home now and watch them on television?
I stay home when I have to because it's a bit difficult sometimes to get to the races, but I do prefer to be there. Nothing like watching them, especially when they go first past the post.
You mentioned the naming of the horses. Now, that's a job in itself. It's well documented that you like 7-letter names, and all of your good horses in recent history have carried 7-letter names. Where did that come from? How did that start?
Geoff started that.
Yep.
He was home with a broken knee when we named Gretchen and Masqué, and Masqué just kept on winning, so that was a pretty good omen.
Your colours are so well known around Australia, the white and purple combination. Where did that come from?
Actually, I rang the AJC, who were at the time allocating colours, and I did want black and white, and they said there was none of that left. Would I have the purple and white? And I said, well, it is my favourite colour. I should have asked for it in the first place. And that's quite a few years ago.
Some of Australia's greatest jockeys have combined to win big races on your better horses. Just looking at the list, Ron Quinton, who rode Masqué in that Golden Slipper.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jack actually chooses the jockeys, and he can get anyone to ride for him, and we've accepted that too.
You've had great success with Mick Dittman.
Yes, he loved Triscay. He made a few bloomers, but Jack reprimanded him successfully.
Jim Cassidy.
Yes, Jim. He was riding a lot for us, and when the Melbourne Cup came for Yippee-I-O, he was going to ride him. And Geoff actually wanted to change just before the race, and Jack said, no, we can't do that. And Jim rang about 3 or 4 days beforehand and said he wasn't going to ride him, he was going to ride Diatribe. So we didn't think very much of him at the time, and we ran second anyway. So actually somebody said to Geoff, you must have been disappointed when you only ran second. And he said, yes, I was, until somebody handed me a cheque for $500,000. Made a difference.
Yeah, that eased the disappointment. Yeah.
Slightly.
Brian York, who rode Falante in that Epsom win and rode many of your horses, forced out of the saddle by that horrific accident at Rose Hill about 5 years ago.
Right.
Brian York was one of the great gentlemen of the riding ranks.
He certainly was, yes. Nice young man and great rider.
Glenn Boss and Eremine had a formidable association.
Very much so. I think he won the 4 Group 1s on him, and Corey Brown rode the Derby.
Yeah.
And we had some good times with Glenn.
Last but certainly not least, the man they call the farmer, Ken Russell, who proudly wore your colours many, many times for the Jack Denham stable.
Yes, that was tragedy. He rode our horse Wyberry in the race before.
Yes.
So it hurt.
Yes. On the other hand, it's fitting that his last winner should be in the colours of Geoff and Beryl White.
Yes, Kenny was a great guy. He was just a genuine gentleman, and I think everybody that knew him liked him. There's actually a memorial of him up in Monto,
Yes.
in our colours, and that's a tribute and a half, yes.
Some years ago you purchased the famous Beamer stud in the Hunter Valley as a location for your very valuable band of broodmares.
Right.
In more recent history, you've expanded that and you've given it a new name.
Yeah, we bought Beamer, which is now Invermere, but Invermere itself was 800 acres behind Beamer, and the two were combined.
Now your son Greg is responsible for the running of Invermere.
Yes. Yes, he does the matings and shoots them down to us to have a look at it, and just manages the whole thing. He's got a good team and they work well together.
You haven't had the slightest inclination to stand a stallion there?
No. I think it's too much work, and you're responsible for so many other people. You'd need a whole different staff. But they're happy the way they are.
I find it hard to believe that two people born in the country, who lived so many years in the country, can now live happily and peacefully on the 27th floor of a high-rise building overlooking Circular Quay in Sydney with the old coat hanger nearby.
We served our time in the country. We still go back a bit, but...
Well, it's good living, John. You look around, you can see it's good living.
And a great view.
But it's a great city, you know. It's everything you want.
You don't need to be gazing at distant horizons anymore, Geoff, but there are plenty out there if you want to look at them.
Yeah, well, I do look at them and love them. Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware, but you are popularly known as the Duke and Duchess of Sydney racing.
You did that, I think.
I think I did.
We don't mind.
We don't mind. No.
there are worse names, you know.
It's been a pleasant journey, hasn't it?
Been wonderful, really, and we've had a lot of fun, and work's been enjoyable, and Beryl and I have been very happy with what we've done, very proud of what we've done, and the racing side of it has just been a thrill right through.
We hope it can go on for quite a few years.